Hey friends, welcome back to Nope, We're Not Monogamous, the podcast where we laugh, learn, and explore the wonderfully weird world of non-traditional relationships. I'm your relationship coach, Alicia Payne, and today we're having one of the most honest, eye-opening conversations yet. So here's the deal. Most people are terrified that opening their relationship will lead to the end of their relationship. And you know what? Annie Undone says they're probably right. But the ending doesn't have to be a bad thing, and also isn't inevitable. Annie's a writer, artist, relationship anarchist with sass and insight that only a non-binary babe can bring. She's been through it all: monogamy, swinging, polyamory, and now relationship anarchy. And today we're going to unpack what it really means to open up a relationship, the challenges of taking it slow, and how to embrace those transitions without too much fear. Oh, and before we jump in, here's a quick shout out to you, my listeners and viewers. If you love what you hear today, do me a solid. Follow the podcast, leave a review. When you do that, I'll give you a personal shout out on one of the upcoming episodes. And it's my way of saying thank you for being a big part of this growing community. And if you aren't on my email list yet, go to aliciapayne.com. It's the best way to stay in the loop for tips, events, new episodes, other good stuff. I'd love to see you there. Okay, let's explore the terrifying, exciting, and transformational truth about opening relationships with the incredible Annie Undone. Let's go. Okay, let's first of all, welcome to Nope, We're Not Monogamous. I'm really, really happy that you're here. Excited to have you. Do you wanna tell the listeners just a quick little like who you are?
Yeah. Okay. So
What's your
I'm Annie
deal?
Undone. I started like making content on Instagram back in probably like 2021, 2022 area. When I opened up my marriage of 16 years and we were practicing polyamory. Kind of like my stump speech is that like I've practiced every single relationship style under the sun, from monogamy to non-monogamy to swinging, polyamory, and now I'm a relationship anarchist. And I'm looking to kind of normalize moving very fluidly through relationship styles without kind of stigmatizing any of them.
Yeah. I love that. And actually it's super relatable because I have gone through that iteration of all those things. Did you I feel like I've been following you for a long time on Instagram. Did you used to not show your face?
That's true. Yeah. So
Okay. I was like,
my
am I putting the right memory together
ex
here?
Yeah, my ex kind of didn't want me showing my face for, some legitimate reasons. But
Sure.
when we got divorced, I was like, what am I doing this for? Like there's nothing left to hide. And I thought that it was gonna be like this big fanfare of like, oh my God, I'm showing my face. And I thought, this is gonna like maybe impact my life in some way. And that turned out to not be true. So I'm no longer anonymous. And I guess it's been that way for about a year and a half. And it was a great choice. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. I feel like that kind of is what happens every step of the way, right? Like opening a relationship, you're like, "Oh my god, if people find out." And then like, okay, well, some people know now and like I haven't died. And then, like the next step, like, "Oh my god, what if people find out?" And then it's like, "Oh, okay, we did that. I'm still
Yeah.
fine."
Absolutely. I mean, I think I have suffered different impacts than some in that I got, a divorce and my polyamory was weaponized against me. Not just in my friend group, not just in the family that I was exiting, but also in the court system.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult for me. But I will say that even with all of that, the storm was weatherable,
Mhm.
and I don't regret any of my decisions.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Good, good. Similarly, we went through a custody case with non-monogamy being the central argument, and at the end they were like, "Well, don't do sex things in front of your kids, like none of us do, and
Right.
we're fine." We were like, "Cool,
Right.
we never
Yeah.
have, and we won't."
It was a very odd and surreal experience to watch my page come up in court documents, to, like, see all of that happening and thinking, "Wow, what am I putting on the line to, like, run this account and to say what I need to say?" Um, And I just decided not to waver from my sticking point, that I was
Mhm.
like, I know that I'm a good parent. I know that I'm not doing anything wrong, that my life is consistent, steady, and stable. And all those things, were fine in the end. I think if there's anyone going through that, I think what most people are so afraid of is like what's going to happen in court. But, most court cases do not make it in front of a judge. And I think that's really important to note for most
Mm.
people who are being like legally threatened by a bitter ex.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly, truly. It is the fear of it. Not always, but often the fear of it is bigger than what actually happens. And it's so fucking stressful. It's
Yeah.
so stressful.
Yeah, it's one of the most stressful things that you will ever go through, which I think is important to note, right? Because a lot of people coming into polyamory, and non-monogamy, they don't have to be
Yeah.
exclusive to polyamory, are long-term monogamous married couples, right? And a lot of us have these starry-eyed notions of we can weather anything, the couple comes first and yada yada yada. But the truth is when you open a previously monogamous relationship, whether you're married or not, um, the likelihood that you're going to lose that relationship is pretty high.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
people don't love to hear that. And of course, whenever I say it, immediately the people who are like, yeah, but not me. And I was firmly in the yeah, but not me camp until it was me.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought even in that I was being realistic,
Yeah.
like going in. But I think that there's lots of reasons why that happens to couples. Breaking codependency is really, really hard for those of us who have come up in compulsory monogamous culture, which is basically all of us.
Yep.
And redefining an entire relationship, there is generally a more reluctant partner.
Yeah.
And, for some of us, once we open into that, right, we can't go back. And that doesn't always mean we can't go back to monogamy in general. Sometimes it just means I can't be monogamous with you anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and people also don't like to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I mean, you're just anytime you're making changes, you've made the change.
Hmm.
Like you
Hmm.
have changed things, and that may not be the final like iteration of it, but like you have changed things. It's like it's I have people often that are like in the like dating, right? They're like single and dating. They're like, I know I don't want to be monogamous, but like shouldn't I meet someone like build a solid foundation of monogamy? And I'm always saying like actually begin as you intend to go on. Don't create a
Mm.
monogamous relationship and then knock down a few walls later on thinking it'll be fine. Like you can
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
but you're going to
I
save
always
yourself some
think,
steps.
yeah, I think that opening a relationship once it's closed is really difficult.
Yeah.
And I also think that you have to think about what are your ultimate goals too, right? Like what kind of relationship do you want to have? I think this is also the sticking point for a lot of couples, right? Is they're like, but in this other relationship, we don't talk to each other like this. In this other relationship, we're able to have these conversations or have this vulnerability, right? So I think we tend to get sometimes stuck in those paradigms. Like Jessica Fern talks a lot about this in Polywise, the paradigm
Hmm.
shift, right?
Yes.
And so a lot of it is about like mentality, right? So if you think you're going to go into a relationship and form a monogamous foundation, then it's going to be built on a monogamous foundation, right?
Hmm.
So I would more suggest or gently nudge people towards a relationship anarchist foundation. Take the mononormativity and the heteronormativity out of the base of your practice, because if you do that, you will have more options ultimately.
Hmm. 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 Can you explain? This is one that is often weird and hard to explain. For you, what does relationship anarchy mean?
Very, very simple, right? People love to overcomplicate this, right?
Uh-huh.
Relationship anarchy simply means tailor making relationships for exactly the people in them. There is no
Yes.
parameters. This is not some big mysterious thing, right? If you look at the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto, it is such a simple document. right? Like it's so short. It's very like it's like what, 5, 6 paragraphs, right? It's really simple. And that can mean anything, right? You can be a relationship anarchist and be monogamous. You can be non-monogamous. You can be polyamorous. You can be some shade of gray of that, right? It's an inclusive term.
Yeah. 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 I love it. That has been the most, I don't know, the thing that I'm always trying to like tell people is you want a relationship that works for the people in the relationship and not for the people that are looking outward in.
Right.
And often that's what we're building is relationships that work for the people looking outward in.
I think too, like sometimes we see relationship anarchy as like this weird Buddha level enlightenment version of polyamory, right? And I just rail so vehemently against this because it's not like some destination. I think that a lot of polyamorous people, as we go through shifts in our relationship setups, sometimes our priorities shift. And so my relationship practice means something very different for me now than it did 5 years ago, right? Part of my practice includes the decentralization of romance and the centering of myself. It
Mm-hmm.
includes intergenerational living, which is something that was very important to me, um, like most of my adult life, but I wasn't really sure how to get there. Um, and so the priority for me isn't on multiple romantic relationships, right? Um, and look, some polyamorous people will fight to the death on this, right? That it means multiple sexual and romantic relationships. I will die on this hill because that is not inclusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
excludes asexual and aromantic people who do not participate along binary lines. And so, really, when we begin to blow out the definition to be more inclusive, the titles don't matter anymore. Right. It's really just about love. And that's why I am so crazy about relationship anarchy because it is the gray areas, right?
Yeah.
It's so wide and wonderful that you don't have to be attached to like one way of doing anything.
Yeah. 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 Mm, I love that. I love that so much. It's so good. There's so I feel like when we kind of like we grow up, we start dating, we start doing those things, and we're so focused on finding a person, and that romance and sex all has to be a part of it. And then we kind of start moving out of that into, like if you're going from monogamy to non-monogamy, there's still like it's so the romance and the sex are such a central part, and that is the part that often screws us up, that often makes us make decisions we didn't want to make, do things we didn't want to do, say yes to things we're really a no to, but the romance and the sex have to like, I don't know, they almost make us, we put those almost on a pedestal above our own actual needs.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I had some really interesting experiences coming into polyamory. I came into polyamory by way of kink. So my first polyamorous partner was an asexual kink partner. But he was not a romantic and he was in fact very romantic. And it kind of immediately began parsing out concepts for me in a way that I didn't necessarily know was happening at first. Um, but it helped me. It was the first time that someone said to me, well, I really don't care what you look like. You basically have no sexual value to me. Like, who are you? I'm interested in being romantic with your personality, with your soul, right? Like that was like a
Mm-hmm.
very mind-blowing concept to me. And as a female person assigned female at birth, I'm a non-binary human, I've learned. But at the time, as the world views me as female and like over sexualizes me in a lot of ways, that was so appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it still took me a lot of iterations in polyamory to get that out of my system, right? Like I'm a
Yeah.
very slutty, dirty person. And that's a whole facet of me.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was able to explore those concepts, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm demisexual." Like, if I sleep with someone too many times, I don't even have to like them. I think I'm in love with them. What in the heck, right? Like, I was like, "I hate this." So it got me to the place where now I can ask myself, "What is emotional safety for me?"
Mm,
And how do I want the interplay of emotional safety and sexuality to happen for me, right? And what types of relationships do I want to have? And what other types of love do I want to experience? Because this is just one, right? Romantic love and sexual expression, that's one thing, right? But there's so many types of love to experience, right? Like imagine me on the precipice of divorce being like moving back in with my mom at 37 years old, right? And now, almost 3 years later, my mom and I doing relationship anarchy style work to deconstruct where's the line between being a parent and being a roommate, from being a grandparent to being a parent. How are we dealing with our trauma and how is that affecting us, right? Like, I had a conversation with my mom and I was like, I think that some of your attachment issues, you think I'm like always running out the door. I'm committed to this living situation with you. I need you to understand that, right? That is a different type of deep work. It goes beyond the bonds of family that
yeah.
we actually have decided we like each other.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. I love that so much.
So I think, and actually it's been really, really interesting because my mom is a therapist, right? And so watching her journey as she's been like, okay, like let me see what you got going on there. Like watching her read the books and watching her be like, I think I want to have like some polyamorous experiences. I think I want to have some polyamorous clients. I think I want to work with this population. Like her and I did a workshop together this year, right? Like our relationship has also gotten more dimensional as
Yeah.
we have explored, what do these things mean to us as a family?
Yeah. Gosh, I love that so much. Like a lot. A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think that this isn't the traditional way, right? When we think
Right.
about where do the roads to polyamory lead for people, right? And this is part of my relationship anarchy because it's like, you know, we generally think about individualizing away from our parents as having my own house and having my own. Well, for me, individualizing away from my mom is saying, no, no, no. I want to have this conversation about like trans advocacy with you. And I want to have a really clear and specific opinion on this. And I want to debate this clinically with you. And I want to talk about how you support people and how I support people. And I want to dig into these like other concepts about, how am I parenting my child and what is your role in that as a grandparent who's living in the house? And where do I not want you to interfere? Right. Like I want to
Yeah.
dig into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because you say this isn't the traditional way, but like only for the last like 150 years is that not the traditional way, right?
Right. Right.
Like
Yeah.
actually this is what we've been doing for most of humanity and we've gotten away from it. And so it's really beautiful to find the tools to be able to come back around to what actually is very like nurturing and supportive and like supports the whole family.
Mhm. And it's
Yeah.
hard, it's also difficult, right? Like I was like, oh, all the work I'm doing in therapy now, it's just like all like centered around like family and breaking these cycles. And this is really uncomfortable. I miss sometimes just doing like, can I just be jealous of something? Because that
Can't we
was
just talk about like easy
fixable.
boundations? You know,
Yeah.
hold
I mean,
hands.
it's hard, it's hard work, but it's worthy work because
Yeah.
we get the types of intergenerational exchanges that are often lost to isolation, frankly.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So good. It's so good. I'm curious, what do you think I keep thinking about like people that are opening up, kind of going through the stages, like we want to be sexually open, we want to be polyamorous, we want kitchen table poly, we want and then expanding and learning more about themselves. And I'm curious, what if you could give someone a way to like skip some of the things that could be skipped, or like fast track some of the lessons, what would you tell people? Like how can they keep moving faster, but not too fast?
I mean, I would say slow down.
Uh-huh.
I would say don't go fast, right? I mean, I think that the fast track is the disaster track. And look, don't get me wrong, right? Like I think if you want to go fast, if you'd rather do your chaos on the front end, it's valuable, but it can be really destructive, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that like the excitement that comes with opening changes the pace at which we open. And I think that people are very eager in those moments. There is such
Mm.
a frenzy that happens around that. And like, I remember my friend who basically like she introduced me to like non-monogamy. She was like, we're swingers and like we're having the best time of our lives. 2 years after we had opened our marriages, we were both like, God, miss frenzy. Don't you just miss that? Right. And so I will give this kind of two sides of the coin advice, right? Like if you are so freaking turned on that you can't slow down, right? I'm not going to tell you don't do that. I'm going to tell you do what you got to do, right? But I think that, you know, some of that joyful chaos that we engage in the beginning of our polyamorous journeys, it's not sustainable. And now I'm very slow, very metered, very intentional. But that was forged in the fire of chaos, right? And so I think there's no magic bullet for couples opening up, right? Like you got to go through what you got to go through. And you have to be mindful of the people around you, but like sometimes you just can't. Like sometimes you just want to lose control a little bit. Like sometimes you want to do your chaos and sometimes you're like just fuck it, who cares? Right? Like sometimes people are like whatever. The consequences be damned, right? And if that's you, right? You can damn the consequences, but there will be some, right? Like I
Yeah.
definitely I had that for myself, right? And so just know the kind of fire you're playing with, really.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But
Which is what's so helpful about things like this, right? Is like because you don't know what you don't know. And
right.
so hearing people's experiences and going like, "Oh, that's what the fire looks like."
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember saying to my ex-husband in the very, very infancy of the journey, I was like, if at the end of this we don't end up together, like I am okay with that, right? There was a intuitive part of me that just kind of knew,
Mhm.
right? And I don't think, and I remember saying this several times, and I don't think he ever heard it. He was just like, yeah, we'll go to therapy, it's fine,
Yeah.
right? Um, and we had very different truths in this, right? And I'm not really like that was a chaotic period of my life, but classically, like I'm not a chaotic person. So that was something very different for me. And I think in some way he wasn't able to look at that and go, it's really different for her. How would she do that? You know? Whereas that kind of chaos was kind of his normal. And so he wasn't registering anything different, right? Like he was always kind of more chaotic, more fly by the seat of his pants, more, I don't really care. Um, and so that felt like past the salt for him. And for me, I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, something really different is happening for me here. Like I could very well be on a very destructive path. And I mean, I made a lot of decisions that severed relationships and blew things up. And those were relationships that needed to go anyway. So it
Mhm.
wasn't, the losses felt great at the time, but in hindsight, it's no great loss.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Truly. Truly.
I mean, like I
I
did it all. Like I dated my best friends of 22 years. Like you want to talk about bad decisions.
Oh. Oh. Mhm.
Take it
You
from
don't
me.
know what you don't know.
I've made them all. Like I really did it.
Oh, but we could do this.
Yeah, like really, I was really just like, yeah, whatever. Like maybe it's meant to be. Maybe it's destiny. Like, no, it's just bad
Mhm.
decisions.
Oh my goodness. I wonder, do you do you look back and go like, even if we hadn't opened up at some point, that would have ended?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just think, well, this is part of my theory is that like polyamory is really an accelerant, right?
Yeah.
It's going to show you exactly what your plot holes are, right? Like I can name them all now, right? Like that marriage was always doomed to end because at the end of the day, um, he wanted control of
Yeah.
me, of everything I did, of, my body, my job, my relationships, my place in life, my money, right? This just sped it up and it was easier to see when other people were around, right? And I've got
Mm-hmm.
my own plot holes too. I will lose myself in people like there is no tomorrow, right? Um, I can be, very romantically centering of people. I idealize people I love. I've got a lot of good qualities too. And I learned that. I learned that I'm very giving. And perhaps to a fault. I learned a lot about my sexuality and my gender identity. Um, my queerness. I was able to, date a lot of women and kind of learn about myself in that arena. I mean, it will just show you everything. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
actually willing to listen, you can learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the best part, in my opinion. The
Yeah,
best part.
yeah. I mean, like I feel like in the last 5 years, I learned the 20 years that have spent in adulthood was all kind of crammed that blooming of like I feel like I was a little bit of a late bloomer, right? Like I came into polyamory around 36, 37, and in those like 4 or 5 years, I learned everything about my adult self that I needed to know to get up to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you I'm curious. Um, do you find that you are more confident and self-assured?
Well, yeah. I mean, for sure, for a lot of reasons, right? I mean, I feel like the day I left my marriage was the day I grew up, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like, okay, I'm an adult now. I'm gonna go. Um, but I think like I think that I'm more sexually confident. I mean, and some of these things I'm still learning because kind of living under the control of my ex-husband really stunted a lot of things about my growth and confidence. But I'm always learning about things that I thought I couldn't do. And that's helping me build a lot of confidence as well, still. Um, there are some issues I feel like I will go to the mattresses with anybody about non-binary and trans issues, about feminism, right? Like there's some about polyamory, about relationship anarchy, right? I feel very confident about some of those issues. And there are issues that I still feel like I got a lot of growth and learning I got to do over here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I feel that. Totally. Totally. Excuse me. Um, do you do you think polyamory or even like non-monogamy is a choice or an orientation?
I think it is both an orientation and a practice, right?
Mm,
Distinct from one another, but obviously intertwined, right? There is being polyamorous, which is the orientation, and there is polyamory, the practice, right? So, the reason I make this distinction and I say that it is firmly both is that a person can identify as polyamorous, but not be necessarily practicing polyamory. And
yeah.
some people can be oriented monogamously and for whatever reason be finding themselves in a, a practice of polyamory. Um, so I think it is first and foremost an orientation in the same way that monogamy and ambiemory are also orientations, right? I identify as an ambiamorous person. I'm capable of either a polyamorous or a monogamous relationship, kind of just dependent on a variety of factors. And I'm not distressed by either setup, really. Um, of course, my version of like monogamy would never look like your grandma's version of monogamy, right? But I think that, you know, What I don't think it is a lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Like they try
Yeah.
to couch gayness as like a lifestyle, right? No, people are choosing like that big old gay lifestyle, right?
Right.
I think you are, either oriented that way or not, but sometimes even when we're not oriented away, we dabble in the practice. And sometimes that's a process of discovery, and sometimes we fall on a spectrum, um, just like anything else.
Yeah. 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 I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like, more nuanced. This is the way I think. I feel like people in the non-monogamous and polyamorous communities, we would all love to give you, these really binary answers, right? It's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. That would be easier for all of us. Like,
Uh-huh.
the one thing I would just love to see us do as a non-monogamous community in general is, like, embrace the nuance, y'all. Like, there is so much nuance when you start unpacking these concepts. And that's kind of the beauty of it. Um, I mean, it's just like the gender binary, right? Like there's it's such a beautiful and diverse spectrum. And yeah, so we're never going to be able to land on this very definitive kind of answer. But why should we, you know?
Yeah. 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 Imagine if we had all grown up knowing that we had all of these options, how much easier it would be to explore like the next level, right?
Yeah.
Some of these concepts that feel really hard because they were foreign to our, like, in our upbringing, they were completely foreign, and so we're like trying to wrap our head around these concepts as adults, and then we get it and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, now, okay, I see. Now what's next? Imagine if
Yeah.
we had all grown up knowing that, like, we had all these options available to us.
Well, when I look at my child who
Uh-huh.
is, Gen Alpha, right?
Yeah.
Um, those kids are much more fluid. They're having these kinds of conversations much earlier.
Yep.
And it gives me like so much hope. It really it really makes me smile when I see like the level of like just knowledge and education that these kids have on, the emotional level, but also on, like, the options level, right? My child said something to me of, like, I said, "Oh, yeah, it's, like, lots of those things," and they were like, "So would you say, like, you're polyamorous for it?" And I was like, "That's not really, that's not really the word, but I love that for you."
Let's break out a thesaurus now.
Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, like, that's it." But, I mean, like, it's in their vernacular, it's in their
Yeah.
ethos, and so it's like it's a cool thing to watch.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I love it. I have 3 teenagers who are like, they're just
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is just that's just what you do. It's just life.
Yeah, it's like normal.
So
It's
whatever.
normal for them. Like,
Yeah.
it's like past the salt. Like, we got a world of choices out there.
Yeah. One of my kids was like, "It's so weird. I'm the only straight person in our house." Like, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, my mom sometimes talks about, like, yeah, like, we were in the car the other day, and she said, "Ah, I'm just so binary. I'm just a woman." And we were like, "I know, it's so weird." We're like, "We're so sorry for you. Like, how are you this straight exactly?" Like, we're thoughts and prayers.
Yes. um mm, you're a writer too.
Yes, yes, I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about that.
So I have a couple of zines I've written. Well, I've been a working writer my entire adult life, right? I've worked in like public relations and I've been a blogger. And so I'm a career writer, right? But I am also a poet. And so I have an entire zine which is called 24 Hours, which is about the first year of my non-monogamous practice. And it started as a chapbook called Cedar, which was about the kinky asexual relationship I had with my first partner, Sam, who was my submissive. And so it kind of unfolds from there. into some other relationships that I had. I think it's about 80 pages. So I wrote that. Um, and then I have sort of this, it didn't really sell well because it was like maybe a little too triggering. Um, it's what would you call it? Creative nonfiction of a sort called The Ride, which is about an experience that I had where basically, if you've ever thought back in your history and thought, was that grape? Like you're like, was I what did that happen the way I thought it did?
Mm.
Was my consent violated? And in my early 20s, maybe I was 19, I was working as a hostess at a restaurant, and a woman came up to me and said, I rode back from college with your high school boyfriend, and he was very sorry about what he did to you that night in the bathroom. I was like, well, I gotta go. Like, but it
Thanks.
really stuck with me. And so that zine is an imagined conversation between her and my ex-boyfriend on this ride and what I think happened
Yeah.
between them and kind of why she like basically word vomited this to me. It was so strange. Um, and so I have that. And then I have my new ebook coming out in February called On Polyamory, which is a little bit different than those. It's 11 essays that I've written. They were all written at some emotional peak, some kind of anxiety or upset or quandary that I was having. And it basically chronicles the downfall of my marriage.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
pretty
Mhm.
excited about that.
That sounds great.
Yeah. And
How
it was at the height of my polyamory as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that's I am not a writer. But but the most writing I've done is when I'm like in turmoil and crisis and emotional upheaval around relationships. Um that's when I've
Yeah.
done the most writing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, and I think, I've been putting the essays out one at a time on my Patreon, and I was like, I don't wanna limit this to just the people who are on my Patreon, like, anyone should be
Yeah.
able to pick this up for $10 and, like, read it, right? Because I think that emotion is relatable. Um,
Yep.
like, we're all experiencing the same set of emotions in polyamory, right? Even if the situations are somewhat different, we're
Mhm.
learning to sit with anxiety. We're learning about what is autonomy.
Mhm.
We've all who are married and have kids had that skeptical family member say you're going to get divorced, and you know what, a lot of us have gotten divorced after we swore we wouldn't.
Mhm.
And I wanted at the time that I was writing all of these works that I've written, I wasn't really setting out to tell the exact story that I was telling. I was just writing what I felt, whether that was in
Mhm.
poetry or in story or in essay form. Um, but in this particular work, when it's strung together, I think it really does tell the story of coming into my self confidence and my truth, not just in the marriage, but in my relationship to polyamory and other people and where I stood on that. Um, which is pretty, which was a pretty painful journey, honestly.
Yeah.
And as I think it is for a lot of us, right? It's it's not easy emotional work. And of course, that lots of people will say to you along the way, well, then why are you doing it? Um,
Yep.
but but whether you ultimately end up in a very polyamorous practice or relationship anarchy or some kind of other setup, these skills will pay you dividends. Like there is so much about myself that I just don't I think it would have taken me so long to learn these lessons, to understand who I was. I think the growth was exponential. Um and just so worth it in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that this is going to end.
Mhm.
People say that all the time, and I always think like, well, if it does, then kind of good because I don't want to be relationship with someone who doesn't want to be in a relationship with me, or in a relationship that isn't serving everyone in it.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then okay.
Well, I think, society sends us a message that the worst thing you can be is like a failure at relationships, right?
Mhm.
Like, whatever. The relationship with myself is the most important one, and what society has effectively done through their pushing of this compulsory toxic monogamy is separate me from me.
Yeah.
And, I remember when I had like a pretty big attachment rupture with my current partner, like after my divorce, it was worse than my divorce. It still goes down in history. We're still together, right? Like it goes down in my history as the one thing, like if I was like acting, that's what I would think of to make myself immediately cry, right?
Yeah.
But it also made me think, what am I doing with myself here that I'm this afraid of a person leaving me? Because being this afraid, what it's going to get me is left because I'm
Yeah.
going to be so terrified all the time. And I wish that we would have more of a societal focus on self security and recognizing health and like centering oneself, right?
Yeah.
Um, we're also freaking traumatized that we're clinging onto other people instead of creating deep security. And in this way, I think the polyamorous community is kind of onto something, right? Like we're trying to do the work to create self security. We're not always succeeding, right? Like it takes a lot of iterations of that, but we're essentially removing the fear of
Yeah.
being left, right? And
Yeah.
that's very triggering for those monogamous people. How dare you not be afraid to end a relationship?
What does that mean for me?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? I always say this, and, it's like, it's not about you, monogamous Sally, right? Like, there's this very, you know, divorce is not necessarily contagious. I'll say not necessarily because
Yeah.
like people are triggered by people leaving marriages, being themselves, saying, I've had enough of this, right? Like, um, because a great many people do make different choices. They will be being treated poorly, abusively, not standing in their worth, and they worry, what does that say about me if I choose to
Mhm.
stay? Right. And so
Mhm.
they will move away from people who are actively making different choices than them.
Yeah.
It is a type of self-protection for those
Totally.
people.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah. It's very much like, wait, if we're not all doing this thing, then why am I doing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm
I
doing it. So
yeah. And I think that non-monogamous people present a challenge to that just by way of their existence, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
In the same way that non-binary and trans people challenge masculinity, right? Very
Yeah.
triggering for the patriarchy
Yeah.
to face their inequities, right? The fact that, oh, but I'm following the rules as a quote unquote man, and I'm not enough. I'm not allowed to be myself. How dare you partake of this type of joy, right? It's
Mhm.
triggering for them.
Very, very clearly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? And that's why we have to keep being loud. That's why we have to
Yeah.
keep existing in joyful ways and say like if you're triggered, be triggered. That's a you
Yeah.
thing.
Let
You know?
them.
Yeah, let them. Oh my
Totally.
god, I just bought it. I just bought the book.
Yeah. Let them. It's fine.
Yeah, I just bought it. I haven't read it yet.
I
I'm
haven't read it
current
yet either.
Yeah, I'm like, it's in my Audible.
Uh-huh. I just started a 365-day embroidery journal so I can listen to more
Oh,
audiobooks and do something with my
nice.
hands.
Yes, I love that. I drive a lot, so I am always at right now I'm reading Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes. So
Yeah,
good. So
yeah.
good. I love that one.
Yeah, I just
Amazing.
feel like a really enhanced imperative right now to really seek joy, right? Like,
Yeah.
because for me, after I was done, kind of like mourning the state of the world in November, I was like, all right, like, what are we going to do? Like, we're not going to, like, we
Yep.
have to be happy. We still deserve joy. So, like, where am I going to fall on this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the best way to fight it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind
Amazing.
of the trying over here.
Where can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Annie_Undone. And you can also find me on Patreon at Annie Undone. I have over 150 long form pieces of writing on there and several collections. I write about everything from relationship anarchy to domestic violence, breakups and divorce, non monogamy, kink, sex. It's all there for you. And I also have a Discord that comes along with that. And I also offer peer supports, one-to-one peer supports, which is honestly some of my favorite work that I do through the page. Is just connecting with people on a one-to-one level.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's amazing. I have one more question for you. And this one does not go on the regular episode, but is for my Patreon supporters. It's
Oh,
called
awesome.
Just the Tip.
Okay. Love that.
And it's what is your favorite or best sex tip? Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to
It
me.
was my
This is great.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, that was Annie Undone with her Just the Tip for my Patreon lovers and friends with benefits. If you didn't get to hear that tip, go to patreon.com/notmonogamous and get signed up so you can get the juicy bits. If you want to follow Annie on her social media or her Patreon, links in the show notes. Bye.